And Coulter, author of the best-selling book In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome, is here to talk about this and obviously the constitutional option that is being used today. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. It's always great to talk to you. By the way, I love reading rumors about you on the Internet. I'm not even going to mention them, but it was very entertaining from my perspective, considering our history together.
Well, for people who don't know, basically gossip columns are always sent in by the agents.
It was on the AOL.
About my private life, but basically anyone that I am alleged to be dating, you know that in the universe of possible people I could be dating, I am not dating those people.
It actually made the wheel on AOL, which I thought was, wow, this must be huge. And
it's weird. This one has been going around forever. Jimmy Walker and I are friends, no romance.
Yep, and he's a great guy, too. I like him a lot.
And a Republican.
That's correct. All right, let's start with the lies, and on top of her Benghazi lies, and then contradicting, and then admitting surveillance, unmasking, and Sarah Carter now saying it's about personal lives.
Well, it's hilarious that this has gone. I mean, everything Trump says is hysterically denounced, and usually within 2 days it's proved true. From the hysteria over at the very beginning, Mexico isn't sending their best. And then, a week later we get Kate Steinle. We had the look at what's happening in Sweden. What are you talking about? Sweden's the safest place in the world. Huge riot, Muslim riots blow up. And now we've gone to, this is one of the most stunning turnabouts I've seen from Trump needs to apologize to Obama for accusing him of committing a felony and spying on the Trump campaign to, well, yeah, we were spying, but it wasn't political and it wasn't, we do it to everybody. It's the craziest turnabout. And now, we at least understand, it seems like kind of overkill to be so upset about Hillary losing, for Democrats and the media to obsess on this nothing burger Russia story, which has completely collapsed. And I wrote a little about that this week. But now we see why they were doing it. This was going to be their excuse when they get exposed for spying on private citizens, unmasking them from the White House itself. It's getting to the point where we're going to find that Obama was actually crawling around, wiring Trump Tower the way things are going with their story unraveling. But now this is going to be their defense. Well, we had to because of this fear of Russian collusion with the Trump team. And if I could just mention one thing that hasn't been talked about because there's no evidence for Russia trying to influence the election. What I wrote about this week is I hadn't seen anyone else say this. The basic story, apart from the absence of evidence, the basic story is cockamamie. Their claim is Russia wanted Trump to win, point one. Point two, that their dastardly plan for accomplishing making Trump the president of the United States was to get in and release emails from the DNC showing that the DNC was being horrible to Bernie Sanders. It's just a crazy theory on every level. Russia is a nation trained in spycraft. We didn't even know, we American experts in politics didn't know how this election was going to turn out. Remember, the Democrats were praying, we want to run against Trump. This is a disaster for Republicans. The day of the election, New York Times had Hillary with a 91% chance of winning, but, and plus the idea that Russia would not want to deal with the corrupt, viable president, Hillary Clinton, but rather a loose cannon who wants to drill Donald Trump. But how would releasing these emails with the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz going after Bernie Sanders, how does that help Trump? It could have been the worst thing that happened to Trump. The Democrats might have gotten their act together and said, oh my gosh, she's taking us down to defeat. We've got to have a come-to-Jesus moment with Hillary and tell her she's got to drop out. We're running Joe Biden. You just never know how these things are going to affect an election. And the idea that this was Russia's idea, add to that the fact that Julian Assange, quite obviously the logical leaker here, is someone within the DNC who thought Hillary's taking us down to defeat. We've had it with the David Brocks and the Debbie Wasserman Schultzes leaking this stuff. And that's what Julian Assange says, as well as one of his associates, that's where they say it came from, a DNC whistleblower, which is the only story that makes sense.
Well, it was actually one of his associates. He's never confirmed it. I did ask him when I had a chance to interview him. You know, it's funny how he comes under fire, but the New York Times printed everything he printed.
Well, he did clearly say it's not Russia. He said
that
I'm not saying
directly.
that much. The guy who collected it, allegedly, he describes where it was a DNC whistleblower passed him the emails. It was a park near American University. And whatever you think of it, Julian Assange, he may be, a reckless zealot. Nobody says he's a liar. He's very nearly the opposite. He's, maybe a little too self-righteous, but he's not the kind of person who lies. He says not Russia, it's a DNC whistleblower. And again, the whole story, it only makes sense as a DNC whistleblower. But now we see why they're so obsessed with these weird connections and really crazy conspiracy theories, which is always a specialty of the left. They need to pretend there's some sort of collusion between Trump and Russia to explain why they were using the apparatus of the federal government, national security, deep state intelligence to spy on political opponents.
Well, and it gets deeper, and this goes to the heart of Sarah Carter's big breakthrough article today, and that is that not only were they surveilling and unmasking, and in the case of General Flynn, leaking, which is a felony, but we now find out that it resembled almost a private investigator's file, and the information is about people's everyday lives, and that's confirmed by Peter King of New York, the congressman. He said it's sort of like in a divorce case where the lawyers are hired, investigators are hired, just to find out what the other person is doing morning until night until you try and piece it together.
Right. And
that's a police state, Ann.
This is now, I know, well, the police state is now in the control of Donald Trump, and I think they got to start declassifying and releasing all this stuff. I mean, I suspect what they're doing is allowing the Democrats to go out more and more and more on a limb before revealing the truth, but this is now in the control of President Trump, and it may be, I doubt it'll be particularly embarrassing, might be a little embarrassing for some people who are being secretly surveilled, but I think it's worth it. This is a pretty shocking... I
may have to hire you as my lawyer, too, because I got Jay Sekulow and Joe DeGeneva, and maybe I'll get you and Levin and part of my team if I was surveilled and unmasked. What do you think?
You're just going to be talking about the penny plan. It'll be fine.
Gee, thanks a lot, Ann. Just at least let's create an image that it might be a little more interesting than that,
You should demand that your tapes be released, because I want to see them all. I mean, if they were going after you...
I have no problem. I have no problem.
If they were, I mean, that really does show how crazy and how political this is. It's tied in with this obsession with Bill O'Reilly right now. And if we could just have a little footnote on that, Fox News compared to other cable networks, good grief. At one prominent cable network.
Listen, you and I know.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable at other networks.
You and I know more stories. And by the way, also the heads of networks, if you know what I'm talking about. Stay right there. All right, we'll take a break. More with Dan Coulter. All right, Sean Hannity Show News Roundup Information Overload Hour coming up at the top of the next hour. Our buddy Rick Unger is here to get beaten up again today. I don't know why he comes back for more punishment. He's going to join us in studio in a minute. We continue with Dan Coulter. All right, so I don't know if I like the term nuclear option. I would call it the Harry Reid precedent, or I'd call it the constitutional option, and that is this is the first time in a couple of 100 years that for purely partisan reasons you have a political party that won't allow an up or down vote. So Republicans finally are showing a little bit of backbone. I've got to give them credit on this.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked about this, because I know other people have jobs. They don't sit around reading all day like I do, and I think conservatives should know the truth about this. And the truth is these supermajority requirements are absolutely unconstitutional. The Constitution clearly expected majority votes for basically everything in the Senate. And when it does not, those cases are expressly identified. There are 5 cases where you need a 2/3 vote to pass something in the U.S. Senate. 1, impeachment. 2, expulsions. 3, 3 to override a presidential veto, 4 treaties, and 5 to pass a constitutional amendment. Now, what sense does it make for the Constitution to expressly say, after Congress passes a law, sends it to the president vetoes it, you can override that veto with a 2/3 vote. But wait, now suddenly we need a 2/3 vote to even pass the law in the first place? It makes no sense. This is an unconstitutional rule that's been invented by the Senate. I don't know if anyone's ever challenged it, or if the courts would feel like they had a right to rule on a political rule of the Senate. But all we're doing with the so-called nuclear option is getting back to a constitutional method of voting. And by the way, sometimes this will go against us. I'm not saying this with passion because Republicans have a majority right now. They wouldn't have needed Al Franken's vote to pass that monstrosity Obamacare. But it is the way the Constitution is written, and I think our constitutional framers are smarter than we are.
Yeah, I think so too, and they've been proven right again and again over time. What do you think about expanding it or broadening these rules changes beyond just judiciary appointments?
Oh, absolutely. As I was just saying, to pass a law, it shouldn't be a majority vote. Now, look, that doesn't mean the Senate can have rules. They keep defending this 2/3 vote as saying, well, we have to let the minority be able to chit-chat. Okay, you can listen to their views. There are other things you can do. We can say we'll give you an hour. We can say you can filibuster. Go ahead, but you got to stand on the floor and filibuster. But no, in fact, I mean, as many constitutional scholars have written about, that was part of the reason the Articles of Confederation were dumped and we moved to a constitution. And also the whole mood of the country after the revolution was, we're sick of being ruled by a tiny minority of elite. We don't want to be bossed around. Yes, we don't have a pure democracy, but when it comes to our representatives in Congress, it is supposed to be majority win, not some special 2/3 law. No, again, that's for a treaty.
I'm up on the clock here, but E-Plurb is awesome. Ann Coulter's new book, and we could talk forever as always. We'll love having you on. Thank you, Ann. And these are interesting times, aren't they?
In Trump we trust.
Yes, ma'am.
E-Plurb is awesome.
All right, thank you, Ann Coulter.